Joining us today on Seconds Out is probably one of the youngest coaches to ever win a WBC belt, Damien Durandt. Welcome.
Sean, thank you very much for having me in your studio. I'm looking forward to chatting with you today.
Great. Thanks for joining us. Damien, like I said, probably one of the youngest coaches to ever win a WBC belt, 29 years old. A bit of a surreal experience for you.
Definitely, it was my dad's first world champion was Sugar Boy Malinga. He was the WBC world champion. And I think my dad accomplished it at 33 or 34. And for me to do it at 29 with the Ilunga Makabu was really special. And obviously that history repeats itself, that my dad's first world champion was Sugar Boy Malinga, and my first world champion was Ilunga Makabu, and they were both WBC world champions. So definitely something special.
You mentioned your dad. He had 97 SA champs, 38 world champs. Seems like you're on your way to try and break that record.
Yeah, it's a big record. I don't know if I'll be able to achieve that. What my dad did was massive. And I also believe that the state of boxing at my dad's time was extremely busy. There was a lot more promoters. There was a lot more shows that kept my dad's fighters going. And that's why my dad could achieve those kind of things. I remember, I think it was around 2008, 2007. I think you'll even remember the Night of the Champions, where my dad did 2 years of parades of champions to the ring.
14 or something, huh?
14 on the first time, and the second time, the following year was 2008. There was 17 current champions standing in the ring, and that's massive. And I remember my dad saying statistically, I think at the end of the year, he had 195 fights for 1 year. Like I'm at the point where I'm getting like 25, 30 fights a year. So to get to 195 would be serious, And I think that's what complimented my dad in achieving what he did. So I don't think I'll break my dad's record. And like I always say, I just continue to add to my father's record.
You grew up inside the ring, next to the ring. What was it like growing up in the corner of Nick Durandt, who, by all accounts, was a guy who didn't take any nonsense, was a straight shooter? I mean, what was it like being a little boy in that environment?
Discipline, that's a big thing my dad believed in. Working around him in the boxing, in the boxing arena, and working with him in the corners and that kind of thing, it was discipline. There was no father-son relationship when we were at boxing. It was strictly boxing, and I know I needed to stay focused and do exactly what he needed and to support him during the fights and those kind of things. So I think it brought a lot of discipline to who I am as an individual and from a young age, and I believe it sculpted me into the man that I am today. And I think that's why I love boxing so much, is because of the relationship I had with my dad in boxing. Although he wasn't a dad during boxing, he was always dad outside of that. So it just kept my relationship strong with my dad and always just having that time. But it's definitely, I took away a lot of discipline from that, and seeing the hard work come through and showing the results, waking up early in the morning with my dad at like 4:30 in the morning, to getting in the car with him at 5 a.m. to go and run fighters, and then he would drop me off at school. So seeing those kind of efforts and then fighters winning and becoming world champions, it just shows that hard work can take you places.
Did you always want to get in the boxing game, or did you want to become an architect, a lawyer?
Yeah, a lawyer, actually, to be honest. I think my parents always wanted me to go into law. They believed there was good money in that. And it was something that I think I wanted, but being around the boxing, I think I just enjoyed the environment the most, I never feel like I work a day in my life working with fighters. Of course, it's difficult. It's not easy. Being a manager of many good fighters, it's hard, trying to get the right fights for your guys, guiding them to their dreams of becoming world champion. It's not easy, but I've loved the sport. And when I matriculated, I was supposed to be going to UJ. I decided not to do law. I wanted to do sports management. And I enrolled at UJ, got accepted, and then my dad said to me, "Why don't you just take a gap year, come work with me at the gym, and just have a gap year, You've been at school for like 12 years. Why don't you have a gap year, check it out, be around the sports environment, and then the following year you can go and do it." And then I applied the following year, I got accepted, and I never went to UJ. So I just landed up getting straight involved with fighters and just working with my dad. And yeah, never became a lawyer, never studied sports management, just followed boxing, and I love it.
I was still a cameraman, and I remember you being a little boy running around there, getting in the way. Any memories that stick out for you in that period of your life?
Yeah, I've got many memories. Great nights at Carnival City, Philip and Doe versus Cassius Beloy. One round I'd be celebrating, and the next round I'd be crying because I had a strong relationship with Philip. So like if he was winning the round, I'd be like ecstatic. If he was losing the round, I was in tears. So just being around those kind of people, traveling with my dad when Silence Mabuza fought in New York for the IBF Eliminator, seeing Silence operate at that level and being in the Big Apple was special. Many memories with my dad, and from a young age running around at Nasrec, all these beautiful venues that are so historic for South African boxing, and seeing all these legends come through the game. It's just great memories for me. I always sit back and things come to mind when I think about boxing, like certain memories stand out, and obviously there's some more than others, but many memories.
Have you brought a lot of your dad's coaching skills and way of doing things into your coaching?
Definitely, the discipline is something I always keep. If I believe you have to be in the gym 24/7. I believe the fighters need to put in the hard work. My fighters, I follow them when they do their road work. Like my dad used to. Obviously, the times are a little bit different because I look for different things in training. So I don't run my fighters at 5 in the morning because I want them to be fresh when they do their boxing. So I run them in the evenings. I follow them in my car. That's stayed. Some of the strength and conditioning work my dad used to do with his fighters, I've kept. And the hard rounds, my dad always believed that fighters need to put in hard rounds in sparring to get the outcome in the fight, because fights are never easy. So I've kept that, and a lot of little traits that my dad had that I've kept. Obviously, I'm my own man, and there's certain things I look for in my fighters and things that I focus on skill-wise that maybe my dad didn't do, or that my dad didn't really enjoy, but I enjoy. So I'm my own man, but I've learned from my dad, and I still implement a lot of things that he did.
How many world champions have you got now?
3. I've produced 3. WBC champion Ilunga Makabu, Even Gabu, Congolese Belgium fighter. He became cruiserweight world champion last year, and now Jackson Chake winning the world title in York Hall, London.
Do you feel like people still see you as Nick's son versus your own man and your own trainer and manager?
I think they do, a little bit, not all the time. I think when I have conversations with certain promoters, they're like, what you've done is incredible, and what you've achieved is unbelievable at your age. And then afterwards, they'll be like, but you are your father's son because you are producing champions. So it's something I don't think I'll ever lose being my father's son because of my dad bringing me into the game and how successful my dad is. What I'm grateful for is that people don't compare me to my dad, which is most important. Like I always say, my dad laid down the platform. I've just continued to add to my father's success because I wouldn't be in the position if it wasn't for him. And I am a father's son because I am producing champions. And that was a big thing for me when I started off in the game, when my dad retired and I took over. Like that pressure of, am I going to be able to produce a champion? Coming from a father that produced 98 South African champions, 38 world champions. It's huge. So it was a lot of pressure. But when I made my first South African champion, that felt great. First international champion. And then making the big one with Junior, becoming WBC world champion, that was just reassuring that I can do this.
You took over the gym basically for a year before your dad passed.
Yes.
How involved was he in guiding you in that year that...
He was involved. He wouldn't tell me what to do. I would follow what I wanted to do, and then I'd come to him and say, Dad, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm thinking. And then he'll tell me, okay, it's a good fight for your boxer, or it's not a good fight. Work on this or focus on that. So he would advise me, but he wouldn't control me. He wouldn't say, go and do that, go and do that. He'd say, look at it like this, look at it like that, right fight, wrong fight, or I'll tell him this is what's being offered. He'll say, okay, try push for a little bit more, or the offer's good, or he would just advise me, but he wasn't directing me in what to do.
Did you take over his stable entirely, or did you lose some boxers?
So after my dad retired, I took on some of his fighters, Jackson Chake was one, Marcus Labojo, Emmanuel Colombo, Augustine Matata. Those are the four I remember.
Did you lose any? Did anyone say, look, thanks, but no thanks?
So it wasn't a discussion I had with Maruti. Maruti was still with my dad. My dad had retired, and I think at that stage, Maruti decided he needed someone that was more experienced in the game. I never had the conversation with Maruti, like, do you want to train with me, or do you want me to manage you, or anything like that. I think when my dad decided to retire, that's when Maruti decided to move on to Colin Nathan, and we never had that discussion. I think at that time, I don't think I would have been able to handle an athlete of that caliber, to be honest. I was, say, fresh to the game. Sure. Stepping into the manager's shoes. Training, I wasn't too stressed, but the managerial would have been a lot of pressure for me.
You're a high-profile guy.
Yes. Yeah. So I took on the four guys that their careers was, should I say, not big yet. Emmanuel had one fight. Augustine Matata had like one fight. Jackson's career, he had like 11, 12 fights, but guys weren't sure where he was going to go. Marcus was the same. So I took over guys' careers that needed building, and that's what I did. So I focused in on those guys, and then my stable started to grow.
You seem to do most of your championship fights overseas. Is that just the way it is at the moment, or is that something you prefer to do?
I'd say it's the way the game is at the moment. It's always more comfortable to have championship fights in South Africa. But I'm not scared to travel, and neither are my fighters. We've won a lot of fights on the road, and coming back with international money, it helps with the exchange rate. But it also, the problem with the exchange rate, it makes it very difficult for promoters to put on fights because of the exchange rate. So it's just the way the game is at the moment. Hopefully it does change a bit more. There's only a handful of promoters that are able to stage world championships in South Africa, so it's not easy. If you look at the international market, there's a lot more promoters that have the budget to put on world championships and big fights than what we do here locally.
Saudi Arabia seems to be the new hotspot.
Yeah, it's pumping. They're pumping a lot of money into the sport of boxing. They've also pumped a lot of money into golf. And they're putting a lot of money into music festivals, and they're trying to make Saudi Arabia attractive and international destination for sports and entertainment. And it's good for the sport. I think because of the money that they're pumping into it, we're able to see the fights that we really want to see. And fighters have no option but to put themselves in those kind of fights. I think a lot of fighters get away with it's not enough money. And the problem is we don't end up seeing the fights we want to. Now it's like there's a whole ton of money. Now we have to see the fights.
Yeah, no more excuses.
Yeah, I just don't know how long it's going to last for. I think MMA is going to have a run in Saudi Arabia soon as well. So hopefully that doesn't affect boxing. Hopefully they just make it a great sporting capital. And what I'm happy about Saudi Arabia is finally athletes are getting paid what they deserved. You see YouTubers, and it's good for the sport in one way that they make their money, but it's sad to see fighters that sacrifice 10, 12, 15 years of their career and they don't even touch a slight little bit of what those guys earn.
Do you think boxing is a sport that'll still be around in 100 years' time?
I do.
With landscape changing?
I believe boxing will always be around. I think it's an honest sport. I think it's two men getting in the ring with gloves on equal rights and fighting each other. There's should I say no advantage in boxing. It's who's the better man.
One-on-one.
Exactly. You've only got your two hands to defend yourself and to punch someone with. When you look at mixed martial arts, there's so many ways for a fight to go. And that's why you often see fighters taking losses just in particular ways. If he's not good on the ground, the opponent takes him to the ground and he wins. And that's, I don't think, a true showing of a great fighter. I think guys get away with wins not even being the better man. So boxing's an honest sport. The better man wins,
A couple of trainers have got MMA guys that they do the boxing skill side of things with. Is that anything you got involved with yet?
No, not something I want to focus in. I believe the stances vary, the attacks vary. There's many different things to look at when you're training an MMA fighter. Like, I think one of the attributes you can give is maybe just helping them clean up their punch technique and maybe just helping them select their punches. But there's a lot more to think about for an MMA fighter. He's got kicks coming back at him. He's got knees. He's got elbows. He's got clinches and all of those kind of attributes. And I think when you work with a MMA fighter and they start to focus in too much on their boxing, they start to neglect other sides. So it's not something I want to focus in on.
Coming back to Saudi Arabia, they've made it very clear that titles are secondary to the fighter people want to see.
Yes.
How much importance do you put on titles?
Titles is status. You know, if you become world champion, you've earned the status of becoming world champion. So belts have always had their value, but I think boxing gets to a point with certain big fighters, it doesn't matter if there's belts on the line anymore. You know, there doesn't have to be belts to see Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk. It's something we want to see. Yes, it's for undisputed status, but it's a fight we want to see. I want to see Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. If there's no belt, that's fine. It's a great fight. And that's what we want to see at the end of the day. You know, I want to see Terence Crawford against Canelo Alvarez just because of who the two of them are. You know, Crawford is like one of the best ever. Canelo's an unbelievable fighter. So I want to see that fight. And I want to see Canelo and Benavidez. You know, that's a great fight. There don't need to be belts at that kind of level in certain fights. I believe once you've earned that status of becoming world champion or unifying, then it's just about you and the other guy.
Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk. What's your prediction for that one?
I think Usyk wins, to be honest. I think from what I've seen from Tyson Fury in his last two fights, it's not that I'm not impressed. It's just I don't think there's enough to beat Alexander Usyk. I think the mobility, agility, the work rate, the footwork, I think the mental aspect of Alexander Usyk is incredible. I just don't see Tyson Fury being able to manage that. And I think it's a fight where Fury's not looking great in the beginning of the fight, and then he starts to become desperate. And when you start to become desperate with Alexander Usyk, you start to pay more because he's so good at counterpunching and great at setting up his shots. And I think for me, the way the two of them are at the moment, I believe Usyk has just superior footwork. And I think Tyson Fury has become heavy and he becomes dependent on being the bigger man. And that just doesn't work with Alexander Usyk. We've seen bigger men in there with him, and they just can't do that. And then Joshua tried to be a bit more physical in the second fight. It didn't work. I think Chisora was one that got a little bit successful with Usyk, but that was Usyk's first fight at heavyweight. So he navigates it so well, and he's just so fit, and the mental focus from Alexander Usyk is incredible. I mean, Tony Bellu's one of the fighters that's consistently honest, and he says he mentally drains you. He makes you so tired mentally because you're constantly thinking about everything that's coming your way, and you just get tired, and that's what happened to Joshua in the first fight.
Junior won the WBC under you, and then he's had 2 losses in a row now. Do you have to rebuild with a guy like that, or is it just continuing at that level?
It's hard to say, you know. I think there's a little bit of rebuilding to do. You know, Makabu is Makabu, and I think it's just about seeing what's left in him, what he still wants to achieve. He's very motivated at the moment, despite the 2 losses, and I think he wants to become world champion again. And it's just about navigating, putting him back in a fight, getting active again. And just it was a tough year, you know. The fight against Badu Jack was a great fight, but we lost, and then we had a very poor performance in Miami. So just rebuild, but not rebuild from the very bottom. I think 2-3 fights, and we'll be back where we need to be.
You manage and train him?
I just train him.
He's got his own manager?
He's got his own manager,
okay,
yes.
So how difficult is that for you?
Not too difficult. I think it's also, because I've got 14 professional fighters in my stable, it allows me to put time into my other fighters. and continue to focus on them. You know, it's not easy managing fighters at that level. You know, if I had to have managed Makabu, a world champion, even Gabu, a world champion, Jackson Chake, world champion, would be very difficult. But fortunately, Tariq manages Makabu and Eve, so I focus in on Jackson and then my other fighters, my younger guys that I'm building.
So what's next for Ilungu? Is there anything in the pipeline for him at the moment?
Not anything in the pipeline. He's focusing on a project at the moment that he announced yesterday. It's called the Makabu Trophy. More details will be out soon, but being the first world champion from the DRC and winning the world title in the DRC is historic. And Makabu's got a good focus on what he wants to do for the sport of boxing in his country.
You said you got 14 pros in your stable.
Yes.
What's the sweet number for you?
I don't know if there's a sweet number as long as there's sweet talent. That's most important for me. I look at the talent of my fighters. I don't want to have a gym full of fighters that I don't believe in. I want a gym of fighters that I believe in. So if it's less than 14, that's fine. If it's 20 and they're all talented, I'm fine with that. I don't want to get to the stage. My dad at one stage had like 40 professionals in his gym. That's just headaches, man. It's not easy. And for me, I'm happy with the number 14. If I get one or two more talented fighters that I believe in, that'll be great. And yeah, just continue to grow. You know, at the moment, I'm a bit sticky as to taking on new fighters. I want to focus a lot on the fighters that I have at the moment. I've got younger guys that need to come through the ranks and build into that international profile. And that's where I'm at the moment. So I'm a little bit sticky on taking on fighters at the moment.
Have you turned down anyone recently?
Plenty. To be honest, it's not easy to do because I know where guys are and how difficult this game is, and they want the support and they want the best for themselves, and I understand that, but I can't take on more if I'm already struggling to give my current fighters enough. You, a big boxing fan, and you work behind the scenes of boxing, and you know how difficult it is for fighters to get 3-4 fights a year.
It doesn't happen anymore.
Exactly.
So unless you're really starting at the bottom with 2 or 3 fights to your name, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to look at it like this. If you take on a youngster at the age of 20 years old and he averages 2 fights a year for 10 years, he arrives at the age of 30 with 20 fights.
It's not good enough to be on the international scene, yeah.
You look at the overseas guys, they're fighting 7 to 8 times a year in the beginning of their career. We don't have that. And that's why I feel it's an injustice to that fighter if I take him on and I can't give him what he needs. And I'll be honest, I think a lot of managers sit in the same position I'm in now. They can't commit to giving fighters more than 1 or 2 fights a year because of the state of the game. And that's why I'm so open to traveling overseas. Firstly, I know my fighters will get paid well, otherwise we're not getting on the plane. I will put them in the fights that I believe they can win. I'm not scared of 50-50 fights, even 60-40 fights in favor of the other guys, because it's the challenge. And we can't be in this game if we don't want to challenge ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things. I don't want to take on fighters and let them down. I want to take on fighters and do my best for them.
Anyone on the scene at the moment who's not under your control who you would love to get your hands on?
I think one fighter particularly I'd like to work with is Sivanati Nonchinga. I watched Sivanati from his 3rd fight, 4th fight. And I'll never forget, I'll share a story with you because you know Rumble Africa Promotions.
Yep.
And I think Sivanati and Zinga were fighting on the same night. And I walked over to the promoter and I just said to them, I know you're focusing on Zinga to becoming world champion, but I said that's going to be your world champion. And Sivanati became world champion. Colin's done a great job managing him, and he's fighting this weekend for the world title.
Yep.
And I'm sure all of us South Africans are behind him. It's difficult being stopped and then coming back to fight the same guy. But he's got the skill sets and the attributes, and I just hope he can bring it home. But that's a fighter I really believe I would love to work with. He stands out to me.
Anyone in your stable who the public haven't seen yet who you reckon's a real talent and a prospect?
There's one kid I keep telling everyone that's special. It's Ntetalelo Babiji Nkosi. You saw him fight at Empress Palace against Gift Bolo. He went and knocked out the South African champion, Prince Lomo, in 9 rounds. He's just become South African champion in 8 fights. He's got like 300 amateur fights. A little bit of a bumpy career in the beginning, but someone I really believe in. I think he becomes world champion one day, definitely. He's got all the attributes. He's an unbelievable fighter. The IQ, the footwork, the intelligence, all of that, everything is there. And I really believe in him. And then I've got a young welterweight prospect. His name's Aaron Matuba from the DRC. He's had 3 fights here. He'll be fighting soon at the end of March on Manny Fernandez's show. And it's just a kid I really believe in. Tall, southpaw, welterweight, good hands, good range. He's very, very good.
You got Eve and Jackson.
Yes.
Both world champions at the moment, both RBO champions. What's the path for them? Is there another belt you're looking at, or what are you going to do with them?
So we're in negotiations with Eve at the moment. An announcement of when he will be fighting is coming soon. Jackson Chowcare is, I think, in a good space at the moment, winning his world title. It's definitely an option to defend, and I would love Jackson to unify. Managing Jackson has put Jackson in the position that he's at. He's 5-time South African champion. We haven't seen that in a very long time. He became WBC international champion in Russia. He won the WBO Global, and now he's IBO world champion. And I'll ask you something, Sean. Jackson is 38, he's turning 39. Have you ever seen Jackson take damage in the ring?
No.
Why?
He's a good mover.
He's a good operator.
He moves
well.
Yeah.
He's defensively very good, and that's why he's able to fight at the age of 39.
You can't think that he has too much longer left, though, at that age.
What I've seen from him in the gym is
really
incredible, yeah. I think he's still got 2-3 years to go. You know, it's just difficult, because if I put him in really big fights now, that could shorten the career. You know, tough fights always take your toll.
Yeah.
And I think I've managed Jackson in a way that I've put him in the right fights. And that's why he's able to operate to the age of 39. And he's accomplished becoming world champion. And I'll go back to when Jackson lost for the first time for the South African title against Sityata. Sityata went on to become world champion. A lot of people thought I was crazy when I said Jackson will become South African champion. They never believed in Jackson. Jackson then became South African champion. Jackson has ticked every single box with me. He's won like 6 belts with me, 5-time South African champion, now he's world champion. I've always been very selective as to who I put Jackson in the ring with, because doing that has allowed him to have longevity in his career. And the next 2-3 fights will also be of value to Jackson, because if I put Jackson in the wrong fight, I can shorten the career. And that can happen to any fighter at any age. You can have kids 25, 26 years old. You put them in the wrong fight and they could be shot after that. So being selective as to the fights I put him in is key. I think the path I have chosen for him is right. And I just want him to maximize as much income as he can from the sport of boxing now. He has already, but I want to make it a lot more. And when I feel the timing of him retiring, I know Jackson will listen to me. And I know that me and Jackson have the relationship where we can be honest with each other. But the way he looks, I think he's got 2, 3, 4 years to still offer in boxing.
Have you had to have those tough chats yet with anyone? I mean, you've only been in the game a couple of years now, where you got to call a boxer in and say, look, this isn't for you.
Yeah, I've had fighters join me and I've just watched them in training. I'm just like, I give them the opportunity. I'm just like, I don't think this game's for you. I've had those conversations. I haven't had the conversation where I tell fighters they need to retire, because all my fighters are still active. So I haven't had that discussion with fighters. And I think it's a very difficult discussion to have. But I think if I had to lay it down on them, it's like, I believe you need to retire. If you don't want to retire, then you need to go and do your own thing. But as a manager and trainer, I see where you are in your career. I don't want to be part of a risk story with you. I feel you've done it. You've had your multiple dancers in the ring, but unfortunately you're no longer a good dance partner. And for your own value for your family and the longevity of your life, I would suggest not boxing. And if they're not happy with that discussion, they can go to someone else.
Why should a boxer choose Damien Durandt over the other trainers in South Africa? What's your unique selling ability for as a trainer?
It's hard to say. I think we've got so many great trainers in South Africa. I think, unfortunately, our sport doesn't have the exposure like it does overseas, and I don't think our trainers get the exposure that they deserve as well. We've got so many good trainers in this country, but why would I sell myself to a fighter? I don't need to. I think the results speak for themselves. No arrogance to that. My dad produced what he did. In the short space of time, I've produced what I have. I don't think I need to justify why I'm a good trainer. I know what I am, I know who I am, and I know what I can do with a fighter. And maybe not all fighters will gel with me, and not all fighters will have success for me, and that's why you have so many different trainers. I think stylistically, you need to look at a trainer and see if that's the right style for you, and then work from there.
Personality plays a big part in that.
Yes. I've got, I'd say personality is a big aspect, but for me, my gym is not a place where my professionals come and train and they leave. We've got a family in my gym. And I think that's what's most important for me, is that everyone in my gym feels like we're one big family. We win together, we lose together.
That's very much the way it felt with your dad's gym as well, was
Yes.
it? Wasn't just trainer, boxer, it was like family,
The decisions I make for fighters impact their lives. And the work that we do in the gym, the sacrifice, the hours that we put in the gym, it needs to feel like family. And when I make my decisions for the fights that I choose for my fighters, I need to make it like it's for the family. And I always respect the fact that there's life after boxing. That's something that I very much focus in on. If I don't feel it's the right fight for my fighter, no matter how much money is there, I'm not going to do it.
You say life after boxing. So how important is the financial management, the learning how to live outside of the ring, part of your training for a boxer?
It's very hard when it comes to money. I think it's one of the biggest challenges we face as managers, because at the end of the day, you're dealing with someone that has their own idea of what they want to do with their money.
Yeah, and you can't tell someone what to do with their own money.
I can say to you, Sean, don't buy that. But you really want that. It's up to you, with my advice that I've advised you why not to buy it, to not do it. But it comes down to each individual. You often deal with people in the boxing game that haven't had anything in their life. And when they first touch money, they want to experience life, And it's very, very difficult, because in one way, you're saying you don't know when they'll touch this money again. Don't stuff it up. But I always say to my fighters, enjoy. But please put away for a rainy day, You never know what can come in the next few years. I'll never forget one story that stands out for me is Philip Ndo was at the all-time high of his career. And he had made a lot of money in boxing. He'd done so well. And just like that, boom, his career was done. He had a cyst on the brain. He was advised not to box again. He's like, geez, the guy fought Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah.
Fought Cassius Beloy, Isaac Schlitzoe. It was in all these high-profile fights. Fought so many Mexicans, Argentinians, Europeans. Like in all these high profiles, and the next minute you wake up the one day, you go for your MRI like normal, you go do your brain scans, comes back and you're like, I can't box anymore. Like GZM. And guys forget that the next day your career could be done.
Yeah.
And you could get into a fight and you could be in the wrong fight and your career can be done. Always remind my fighters, guys, have a plan for your money, please. After my fighters win a fight, I sit down after them, I say, what do you want to do with your money? And they'll tell me, I want to do this, I want to buy that, I want to buy that. I'll say, okay, do that, don't do that. Please, rather just put that little bit. Let's do it on the next fight. Sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't, We ourselves will sometimes walk into a shop and we'll be like, that's expensive. Oof, I like it, but it's expensive. And then we leave the shop and then the next day we come and buy it because we want it. And it's also part of the rewards of making money in boxing is because you haven't had it. Like I said, you want to experience it. So there has to be that indulgence as well.
Do you make decent money out of boxing?
Not enough for what I would like, but I probably could have gone into other businesses and made money, but I love boxing, and that's why I'm in it. Sometimes a lot of people don't understand you can have a fighter in his first 10 fights, he hasn't made you any money. By the time you've taken him to a weigh-in, you've fed him, hydrated him, wrapped his hands, petrol, you haven't made any money. You're losing money. And people don't realize that's a sacrifice you put into the sport and the sacrifice you put into that fighter. And that's just in 3-4 days of the fight week. What about all the hours you've put into that fighter?
Yeah.
Those unpaid hours. And I think people think it's easy being in the game, you're just going to make money. Of course, you're going to make money when you arrive at a fight like Rourke Knapp and Brandon Taser. Of course.
Yeah.
What about the other 8-9 fights before that that took us to get to that point? And your next paycheck is determined on your next outcome. So it's very difficult. It's not easy. A lot of people don't understand that boxing trainers actually just sacrifice because they love the game.
Yeah. And boxer size? Is that something that you need to do to keep the gym going, to keep it profitable?
Definitely. The boxer size and the personal training is something that just keeps the doors open, keeps monthly expenditures paid and keeps things going. But it allows us to chase our passion of turning fighters into world champions. And that's when you arrive at money. That's when you start to see the rewards for your hours. And it's never guaranteed, Sean.
Yeah. No, like you said, Philip, one day here's your cash cow, next day is gone.
And the same as also you invest so much time into the kid and unfortunately just meets the wrong fighters at the top.
Yeah.
And he can't overcome the hurdle. And doesn't become world champion and you just don't make the money you thought you would make when you arrive at this point. And that's why I just never focus on the money. I just focus on making champions. I'm just like, the more my guys become champions, the more they've accomplished what they want to. There's been bits and pieces of money that's made along the way, but I'm very much a person that's so proud on achieving the status of becoming champion. That means more to me than the money. I've had times in my career where I've just put that money back into my fighters. To finish a fight, made 30, 40 grand at local level here, and I've taken that money and I bought sparring equipment, 10 pairs of sparring gloves at 3 grand each for the guys to use in the gym because they don't have the money to buy equipment.
Yeah, very much a passion, more than a business.
100%.
Yeah. What's next for you and your fighters? Anything lined up?
Yeah, so obviously we have the complications at the moment with the BSA board. We're waiting to hear what's happening so that we can move forward. But provided everything goes ahead, I've got Aaron Matuba fighting on Manny Fernandez's bull. I've got Brian Taser fighting on Manny Fernandez's bull. That's Brandon's brother. Then I've got Brandon Arto against Darren Rousseau on the 4th of April. 4th or 6th, I can't remember,
4th.
4th
Thursday
of April.
the 4th,
Yeah, so I've got that coming up. And then Ivan Gabu said we'll know the exact date very soon.
Which title?
Defending his IBO world title. Okay. And then I've got something in the pipeline for Jackson Chake. Got a few options for Jackson. I want to see Emmanuel Colombo out soon. Very good talent. And we'll see.
Anyone you want to call out? Anyone in South Africa that you really want one of your guys to come up against?
Look, it just depends where the fighters are in their career, I'd like to see my junior welterweight and Tetelelo and Corsi make 2 defenses of his South African title and then move on to bigger fights. I don't have anyone in particular that I'm looking at. So there's no real call out there. I'd like to see Brandon Art win against Darren Rousseau, and I'd like to see him fight Shavonte Koopman again. I don't believe that's a true reflection of Brandon Taser. A lot of people don't know the background of the boy and the complications that he's faced in the last 2.5 years and the challenges. And, it's been difficult for him, but he's in an unbelievable space right now. He's so happy at home. He's putting in all the efforts at the gym. He's looking like $1 million. And I think Brandon's ready to see Koopman again.
World champion potential?
Yes, I've always believed Brandon's got the capacity. I think it's about Brandon being active. And unfortunately, he hasn't been as active as I want him to. And I believe he can become a world champion. You've seen Brandon when he rises up. Brandon's an entertainer of note. He's an unbelievable fighter. We didn't have the fight Rourke Knapp and Brandon Taser 2 because none of them showed up. They both showed up, and that's what made that fight so special. That was a fight above world championship level. The way those kids fought, you can give them the status of more than world champions by the way they fought. And that's just the level of Brandon Taser. And that's where we need to arrive back at. And I think we will. And it was difficult for him to get up that night. He had just lost his dad. But he got up that night and he put up one hell of a performance. And the fight was so thin. It really could have gone either way. And I think it just adds to the status of who both of them are. But Brandon will be back with a bang. And a very, very big bang. Because I believe where he's at mentally at the moment and his space and his surroundings is where he needs to be.
Look forward to seeing that.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate it. And hopefully it's not our first and last. I want to be out here chatting with you again.